So, there is a digital copy of this, and that part that says U.S. House Resolution 106 that's underlined is a link. If you look over here at the TV, let's see if we can get that to open. Here's the basic scenario. You guys in the audience are members of the House of Representatives, which I think all of you have taken government, or most of you have. They're the 438 guys and ladies who represent a congressional district and vote on bills and make laws. One of the things they do is they vote on resolutions, which, as you know from last year, like a Justin Bieber music video, what is the point of a resolution? They don't actually make anything. Like, you don't make a law. What's a resolution do, Mr. Brown? It expresses your feelings, like a Justin Bieber song, right? So here's what this one does, because you guys get to vote on this, yes or no. We don't get to vote, the presenters don't get to vote, just the audience members, okay? You vote yes or no, do you agree with this statement? So here's what House Resolution 106 says. The House of Representatives calls upon the President to ensure that the foreign policy of the United States reflects appropriate understanding and sensitivity concerning issues related to human rights, ethnic cleansing, and genocide documented in the United States record relating to the Armenian Genocide and the consequences of the failure to realize a just resolution, and secondly calls upon the President in the President's annual message commemorating the Armenian Genocide issued on or about April 24th, which is 2 Sundays from now, to accurately characterize the systematic and deliberate annihilation of 1.5 million Armenians as genocide, and to recall the proud history of the United States intervention in opposition to the Armenian Genocide. So what you get to vote on at the end is really simply yes or no. Do you agree with that? Is that a wise decision for our country to make? Okay, if you notice, I kept track, that has the word genocide in it 5 times. Most of you know our Congress has never done that before, used the G word towards the Armenian Genocide. And no sitting president has ever used the G word. So this would use it as Congress and tell the President, you better say that in your speech on April 24th. Okay, now this is a really complex issue, and I'll tell you when I'm going to be biased, but right now I'm just trying to explain the background. So if you look at your sheet, it'll tell you like group 1 name. I put the group members in, and what I get for that is half of them didn't show up, so if those change I'll tell you. Like Grace told me she wouldn't be here, I put my name in parentheses because I thought I would take over for her. You're just going to keep track of what each group tells you. What good points do they make? Are they convincing you? And they should be saying repeatedly, vote yes on that, or vote no on that, and why. If you flip your sheet over, there are 3 more groups on the back, so there's a total of 6 that you'll hear from. And then at the bottom, there are some boxes to check. Okay? Please don't vote until the very end. Even if you think you know the answer, or you think some group did a great job persuading you to vote yes or no, don't vote until you hear everybody, because you never know who might surprise you and have a good point at the end. If you guys have questions, if something is unclear, if they're going too fast, raise your hand and politely ask them a question, and they would be happy to answer it. Okay? So, I think I'm going to have to go first, because Grace is not here. So I'm going to put on my biased hat. If you go back to the front page where it says Group 1 name, and it says Grace and then Mr. McKelkey, that's me. These guys were basically hired to lobby Congress, okay? Because a lot of times some organization has an interest in if a bill passes or not, okay? So Grace sent me here, so I'm going to use it. TJ, could you hit the left light switch for me, please? But we're going to pretend I'm her, and I'm going to be biased, okay? So I'm not Mr. McKelkey. I'm a lobbyist. And I was hired to lobby you guys, like twist your arm or persuade you to vote a certain way. So here's the first thing that I'm going to tell you. When you get to vote at the end, you should definitely vote no. This is a really, really bad idea. And let me show you some examples of why it's a bad idea. Okay? First, the background. This event allegedly happened from 1915 to 1918. You guys are all good history scholars. What was going on in the world during that time period, 1915 to 1918? I know, you went to North Dakota for history class. World War I. Have you guys heard a saying that goes something like this? All is fair in love and war. Is that especially true during a world war? Because here's something I have to get you to agree with. Is there such thing as a war, especially a world war, without horrible, terrible things and atrocities happening? Can you have a war without horrible things happening? No, that's inherently part of war, especially a world war. So, when you see this flag, this is the flag of the Ottoman Empire, or today Turkey. These guys are fighting with the Central Powers. That's Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottomans. They're kind of outnumbered, they're kind of sandwiched, and while World War I is going on, there's a large minority group that lives in their country that are distinctly a different ethnic group, really racial group, and especially religious group called the Armenians. Okay? Most Turks at the time were Muslim. The vast majority of them. If you look at Turkey today, there's something like 96% Muslim. If you look at Armenia today, Armenia is something like 95% Christian. And we know, throughout all of world history, different religious groups have struggled to get along, especially those two. Okay? But the Turks get a bad rap for this whole genocide accusation. And I'm going to show you why that's really not fair to them. Okay, here's the first thing. When you look at how most of the Armenians died, and about 1.5 million of them probably did die. It's hard to say for sure because we don't have great records today. Most of them died of dehydration, starvation, or exposure. Okay, like exposure to the elements. Not bullets from Turkish guns or, like getting executed by the Turks. But what happened was some Armenians fought against their own country, the Ottoman Empire, and joined the Russians. And the Turks basically said, listen, you can't be fighting against our own country. We're going to have to either move you out of here, or if you fight against us, does that not make you a traitor if you fight against your own government? Then some of you might have to die. But remember that most of them did not die from Turkish bullets. It was dehydration, starvation, and exposure. Which is really unfortunate. No one's saying that was a good thing. But the word genocide really doesn't fit. Okay? Here's a good example. The term genocide, okay, which basically means intentionally trying to kill an entire group of people. That word did not exist in 1915, nor in 1918 when the genocide allegedly was done. That word didn't get coined or invented until 1944. And you're going, okay, well, why does that matter? Think of it like this. Let's say you're accused of a crime. That's sort of a relatively new crime. Let's say cyber terrorism. That's not a crime that's existed for very long. It's a crime today. And let's say 20 or 30 years ago, you did something when cyber terrorism wasn't a crime, it wasn't even a word in our language. That didn't exist. 20 years after those events, some guy in Poland comes up with this term and says, that's what you did 20 years ago. How can you be punished and accused of a crime that didn't even exist when you allegedly perpetrated? How can we say you're a cyber terrorist if that term and that law didn't exist when those events took place? That doesn't make sense, does it? And in the U.S. Constitution, there's a term for that that says you can't do that. Ex post facto laws, after the fact. You cannot punish someone for something that was not illegal at the time. Okay? Another good example, Utah says you have to be 19 to buy tobacco, right? You guys know that? Let's say they change it to 18, starting June 1st. Okay? Can they go back and write people tickets after they change the law for something you did before it was illegal? That's an ex post facto law. That's like calling this genocide in 1944 when you come up with the term. How can you use that to describe events in 1915 when that term didn't exist? Okay? Now, if those reasons don't convince you, I think here are the best ones. This happened 101 to about 103 years ago. And it's really unfortunate, and it's sad, and it's terrible. But what you should think about is today, the year 2016, what repercussions are there for us as a country if you guys mistakenly vote yes, because you should be voting no at the end, and call this genocide. Okay? Turkey is in NATO. It is one of our best allies that is a majority Muslim country. We don't have many Muslim countries on our side in the world today, as you guys know. And they're right next to Syria and Iraq, and very close to Iran. So, if you guys vote no on this, which you should be, the Turks have promised us, I'm told, that they will buy more weapons and aircraft from us. So when like our jets are out of service or we don't want to use them anymore, they'll buy them from us, which is good for us. They will allow us to send more supplies through U.S. bases in Turkey to fight against ISIS, and let us use their air bases to launch airstrikes against ISIS, which they're in Syria and Iraq, which is Turkey's neighbors. So we kind of need them if we're going to fight ISIS. Okay? So even if you don't care about the history, whether you do or you don't, you have to say, what's going to happen today? Those are all good things for us. Okay? But that's only if you vote no. If you, for some strange reason that I cannot comprehend, vote yes on this, that would be a horrible mistake. Okay? And here's what the Turks have told me that they would be inclined to do if you guys mistakenly vote yes. Don't vote yes, vote no. But if you do, they're going to withdraw their ambassador from us. That is the equivalent of saying, you're dead to me, we don't even talk to you as a country anymore. And I remind you where they are. Here's Turkey, here's Iraq and Syria, they're neighbors. So they're not a country that we want to ignore us. They're going to boycott U.S. goods and say, we don't buy anything made in America anymore, if you guys call this genocide. Any airbase or military personnel that we have in Turkey, which we have numerous air bases in Turkey right now, they're going to kick every American military man and woman out of their country and say, you guys are not welcome here anymore and you cannot use our facilities. And they're not going to let any supplies go through Turkey that we're trying to send to our troops in Iraq or Syria or anywhere else. Okay, so basically they're going to break up with us and say, we're not friends and you can't use our country to fight against ISIS. Okay? So you have to think, this is a trade-off here, and no one is saying what happened to the Armenians was a good thing or that it's not terrible. It really is. But when you use that G word, which that has 5 times, you have to understand that one of our most important allies in the world today, especially if you're one of those let's bomb ISIS or let's fight ISIS, you need Turkey to do that. It's just a fact of geography. You're going to make them really, really mad if you say the G word 5 times and vote yes. Okay? And since I asked the other groups this, President Obama in 2007, okay, he was Senator Obama. He was running for president. Does anyone know what he said about this topic? He said, when I'm president, what am I going to do? You remember. What did he say he was going to do when he got elected president?
He was going to acknowledge it.
He's like, it's a fact, call it genocide, easy. So the last 7 years he's been president, how many times has he called it genocide? 0. Now he has one last chance on April 24th, which is Armenian Remembrance Day, to call it genocide. I don't think he will. But you have to ask yourself, why would he change his mind once he became president? Because he said, oh, I'll call it genocide. That's an easy question. And for 7 years in a row, he hasn't. Now, you might say he's a liar, and maybe he is, but I think he realized our country's relationship with Turkey is too important to jeopardize, to ruin over something that happened 100 years ago. And that might be unfortunate for the Armenians, but you have to do what's best for the United States today as president. Okay? So when you guys vote at the end, I urge you to vote no and value our relationship with Turkey today over something that happened 100 years ago. Okay? Now, that's me doing Grace's job and being as fair to her perspective as I can. Does anybody have a question for me about anything that I said or about Armenia or Turkey or what happened? And that was Grace's presentation. I know you can't see very well, but all the sources are cited. Okay, so don't vote yet, but when you remember, you can look back and say, okay, which one do I want to do? Mr. Long, you're going to be next if you want to come up. Question, Ms. Kay?
Yeah, what happens to Turkey if we call it genocide? I mean, they told us what they'll do to us, and they'll clearly be angry, but
Yes.
will anything actually happen to them?
Do you want my biased, I'm still presenting answer?
Yes.
Do you know the Turkish president, Erdogan? Have you heard anything or read anything in the news about him? So what I always tell kids, two things. First, President Erdogan in Turkey, he's an interesting guy. He's not a fan of free speech. So for example, 2 years ago, some people in his own country were making fun of him on Twitter, and he convinced his own parliament to ban Twitter in the entire country because he was made fun of. And then 2 weeks ago, some silly Germans made a YouTube video mocking how he's a fascist and he doesn't support free speech. And he called the German chancellor and said, take those down, I'm offended. Proving the point of the YouTube video that he has no tolerance for free speech. So like, he's a pretty reactionary guy. He's a hothead. And he hates free speech. Why? I'll leave that up to you. Do you want to add something to that?
Yes, I just saw this morning Erdogan just called German one more time for this poem what Jan Böhmermann wrote about him, and he wants that he gets put on trial in Turkey for what he has done that would cause like maybe capital crime in there. So he's trying to get rid of him. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. So like severing diplomatic ties is a big deal. That's like saying we don't even talk to you, we don't acknowledge you exist, which based on what's going on in Syria right now, it's probably not a country you don't want to have a relationship with. Tyler, I'm trying to get yours ready. Does anyone else have a question from that presentation? Is that what it's telling you, TJ?
Huh? Yeah. That's extra calorie.
No, it's yours too.
Oh, I know that.
Let's try it again. Okay. Worst case scenario, I bet I can open it in Google Drive and it may not click through your slides, but they'll